Have you ever found yourself in a conversation with someone, maybe a friend or a coworker, and suddenly they stop talking? They sort of pause, they make a little sound, and you immediately panic. You think to yourself, oh no, they are waiting for me to say something, or maybe I missed a word, or perhaps they just completely forgot what they were talking about. You get this tense feeling in your chest because real English does not sound like the audio tracks in your textbook. In a textbook, people speak in perfect sentences. They say, "Hello, how are you? I am fine. And the weather is beautiful today." But out there in the real world, people are messy. They stop. They start a sentence and then completely change direction. They use sounds that are not even real words, and if you are learning English, especially if you are at that intermediate level, these moments of hesitation and thinking time can make you feel incredibly confused. But I want to tell you a secret today. Those pauses, those little sounds, they are not mistakes. They are actually the secret code of natural human speech. Once you learn how to understand hesitation, you will stop feeling lost in conversations, and you will start following natural speech without any confusion at all. Welcome to English in Fluency. I am your host, Alex, and today we are going to do something a little different. We are going to train your ears to love the silence and the noise that happens between the words. Think about your own native language for a moment. When you speak your native language, do you talk like a robot? Do you plan out every single word in your head before you open your mouth? Of course, you do not. Your brain is thinking about the idea, and your mouth is just trying to catch up. Sometimes your mouth wins the race, and sometimes your brain has to stop and search for the right word. This is exactly what happens in English. When an English speaker hesitates, they are not confused about their English. They are just thinking. They are just human. But when you are listening to English as a learner, your brain treats every pause like a red alarm. Your brain thinks that the silence means you did not understand something. We need to change how your brain reacts to these moments. We need to train your brain to hear a pause and just relax. Let us talk about the most common way people fill up their thinking time. We call these filler words. You have probably heard words like, like, you know, and, well. In a strict grammar class, teachers might tell you not to use these words, but in real life, they are everywhere. Think of these filler words as little road signs. When someone says or they are putting up a sign that says, "Please wait, I am still talking. Do not interrupt me yet." It is a way of holding their turn in the conversation. If you are talking to someone and they go completely silent for 5 seconds, you might think they are done talking, and you might start speaking. But if they say, they are telling you that they are still holding the microphone. So when you hear someone say, you do not need to translate it. You do not need to wonder what it means. It means absolutely nothing. It just means they are thinking. Let me give you an example of what this sounds like in a real conversation. Imagine two friends, Leo and Maya. They are trying to decide what to eat for dinner. Leo says, "I was thinking, maybe we could get some, Italian food?" And Maya replies, "Oh, like pizza or pasta?" Now, listen to that again in your mind. Leo did not say, "I was thinking, maybe we could get some Italian food." He put an right in the middle of the sentence. If your brain is not used to this, you might focus so hard on the word that you completely forget the rest of the sentence. You might start thinking, why did he say, um? Did he forget the word Italian? No, he just needed a split second to pull the idea of Italian food out of his brain, and Maya used the word like. She did not say, do you mean pizza or pasta? She said, oh, like pizza or pasta. She used like as a bridge between her thought and her words. As a listener, your job is to just jump over that bridge. Ignore the word like in the middle of a sentence when it is used this way. It is just a habit. It is just a sound people make to keep the conversation moving. When you listen to English today, I want you to actively listen for these filler words. Do not let them scare you. When you hear or just smile to yourself and think, ah, there is a human being thinking right now. Now, there is another type of hesitation that really trips people up. This is when someone starts a sentence, stops, and then completely changes what they are going to say. We call these false starts. Have you ever done this? You start saying something, and then you realize it sounds wrong, or you realize it is not what you actually mean. So you stop, and you try again. It is completely normal. But when you are listening to English, a false start can make you feel like you just missed a huge piece of information. Let us look at an example of a false start so you can see how harmless it really is. Imagine a guy named Sam is talking to his coworker, Chloe, about a project they are doing. Sam says, I think we should finish the report by, well, actually, maybe we should just email the boss first and see what she thinks. Listen to how that sounded. Sam started by saying they should finish the report. But then he stopped himself. He said, well, actually. Those two words are a massive signal. When you hear someone say, well, actually, it means they are changing their mind right in front of you. They are deleting their previous words. Sam realized that finishing the report might not be the best first step, so he hit the delete button in his brain and started a new sentence. If you are not used to this, you might be sitting there waiting for him to say when the report is due. You might be waiting for him to say, finish the report by Friday. But he never does. He changes direction. As a listener, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to drop the first half of his sentence and follow him down the new path. Do not get stuck on the deleted words. If someone says, actually, just erase the last 5 seconds from your memory and get ready for the new information. It is exactly like editing a document on a computer. You type a sentence, you highlight it, you press backspace, and you type a new one. When people speak, they are just doing that out loud. They are backspacing their spoken words. So when you hear a false start, do not worry. You did not miss anything important. The person is just fixing their own thoughts in real time. Let us try another conversation to practice this. I want you to imagine you are sitting in a coffee shop. You are just relaxing, drinking a cup of coffee, and you are listening to two people at the next table. Their names are David and Elena. They are talking about their weekend plans. David says, so, what are your plans for Saturday? Elena says, I am not sure yet. I was going to clean my apartment, but my friend called me and, she wants to go shopping, so I will probably do that instead. Let us break down exactly what Elena did there. She started by saying she was not sure. Then she used the phrase, you know. This is another brilliant filler phrase. People say, you know all the time. They do not actually mean that you know the information. It is just a sound. It is a way to fill the space while they remember what they were going to say. Then she started a false start. She said, "I was going to clean my apartment." But right after that, she added more information. Her friend called. Then she used, again. And finally, she gave her real answer. She will probably go shopping. If you are reading this in a textbook, the sentence would just be, "I am going shopping with my friend on Saturday." But real people do not talk like that. Real people talk in circles until they find the straight line. They talk about what they were going to do, and then they talk about why they are not going to do it. And then they finally tell you what they are actually going to do. As a listener, your brain has to learn how to hold all these pieces of information without getting stressed. When Elena said she was going to clean her apartment, she was not lying to you. She was just telling you her original plan before she changed it. When you hear people do this in English, just ride the wave. Let them take you on the journey of their thoughts. You do not need to write down every single plan they mention. Just wait for the final conclusion. I want to talk about something else that happens a lot in natural speech, and that is the power of stretching words. Sometimes people do not use filler words at all. Instead, they just take a normal word and they stretch it out to give themselves more time to think. Have you ever heard someone say, "wheel" or "so"? When someone stretches a word, they are turning one syllable into 2 or 3 syllables. This is a very natural way to hesitate. It sounds much softer than saying, Let me show you what I mean. Imagine a woman named Sarah is talking to her neighbor, Tom, about a movie she watched last night. Sarah says, "The movie was, well, it was pretty good, but the ending was kind of strange." Did you hear how she stretched the word well? She did not just say the movie was well, she held on to the sound. She was buying time. Her brain was busy deciding if the movie was good or bad, and she needed her mouth to keep making noise so that Tom would not interrupt her. When you hear stretched words, just treat them exactly the same as or They are just thinking sounds. Another word people stretch all the time is so. People love to start sentences with so. They will say, "So, I was thinking about what you said yesterday." They stretch the "so" to give themselves a second to remember what you said. It is a very friendly way to start a thought. It shows the listener that they are about to say something important. So when you are listening to English, and someone stretches a word, do not try to analyze why they said it that way. Do not think that you misheard the word. Just know that they are thinking, and wait for the rest of the sentence. Let us put all of this together into a longer practice. I am going to tell you a story about 2 people having a conversation, and I am going to include all the hesitation, all the filler words, all the false starts, and all the stretched words that we just talked about. Your job right now is to just read through this conversation and try to feel the rhythm of it. Do not focus on the individual filler words. Focus on the main ideas. Imagine a man named Marcus and a woman named Lily. They are sitting in a park and they are talking about a trip they want to take. Marcus says, "So, I was looking at flights online this morning, and, the prices are actually pretty reasonable right now." Lily says, "Oh, really? Where were you thinking of going?" Marcus says, "Well, I was thinking maybe we could go to Spain. But actually, no, wait. Portugal is supposed to be really nice this time of year, and it is a little bit cheaper. So, maybe Portugal? Lily says, Portugal. I have, like, I have always wanted to go there. What city would we fly into? Marcus says, probably Lisbon. I have a friend who went there last year, and he said it was wheel. He said it was amazing. The food is great, and the people are really friendly. Lily says, that sounds perfect. I just need to, you know, I need to check my work schedule. But, I am pretty sure I can take some time off next month. Let us look at that conversation and see how much natural hesitation was in it. Marcus started by saying he was looking at flights, but he had to pause and say, before he could even finish his first sentence. Then he threw in a, you know, and, like, just to fill up the space while he was talking about the prices. When Lily replied, she struggled to find the word thinking. She said, where were you thinking of going? She repeated herself. She said, where were you? And then she had to think. So she said, and then she just repeated the beginning of the question again. This is so common. People lose their train of thought for a split second, and the easiest way to get back on track is to just repeat the last few words you said. It is not rude. It is not strange. It is just how human brains work. Then Marcus did a beautiful false start. He said he was thinking about Spain. But right away, he caught himself. He said, but, actually, no, wait. That is the ultimate delete button. He deleted Spain and replaced it with Portugal. If you were listening to this and you started thinking about Spain, you might have felt confused when he suddenly switched to Portugal. But now you know the secret. He was just editing his thoughts out loud. He was not trying to trick you. He was just thinking. And at the end, Lily used a filler phrase, you know, and an to give herself time to talk about her work schedule. If you can train your brain to listen to that entire conversation and not feel stressed by any of those pauses, you will have made a massive leap in your English listening skills. The biggest problem for intermediate learners is not vocabulary. You probably know all the words in that conversation. You know the word flight. You know the word reasonable. You know the word schedule. The problem is the messiness. The problem is the filler words. The problem is the false starts. Once you accept that messiness is normal, your listening will become so much more relaxed. I want us to talk about silence for a moment. We have talked about filler words like and stretched words and false starts. But sometimes people just stop talking completely. There is just silence. This is called a thinking pause. For many English learners, silence is the worst thing you can hear. When there is silence, your imagination goes crazy. You think the person is judging you. You think they are confused by your accent. You think you are supposed to be speaking. But in English-speaking cultures, a short silence is totally acceptable. People use silence to organize complex thoughts. If someone asks you a difficult question, it is perfectly okay to just stop and think for 2 or 3 seconds. You do not have to fill every single second with noise. When you are listening to someone and they go silent, just wait. Do not jump in. Do not try to finish their sentence for them. Just give them the space to think. Imagine you are talking to a man named Kevin. You ask him a question. You say, Kevin, how did you meet your wife? Kevin looks up at the ceiling. He is silent for 3 seconds. He is not ignoring you. He is not having a stroke. He is just traveling back in time in his memory to find the answer. Then he says, oh, that is a good question. We actually met at a mutual friend's birthday party. The silence was just his brain loading the memory. When you listen to podcasts or watch interviews in English, you will hear this all the time. The interviewer asks a deep question. The guest goes quiet for a moment, and then they start talking. As a learner, you have to learn to be comfortable with that quietness. Do not let the silence make you panic. Just breathe and wait for the words to start again. Let us do another practice exercise. This time, I want you to pay very close attention to the thinking pauses, the places where there is no sound at all, and see how they fit naturally into the flow of the conversation. Imagine a woman named Rachel is talking to her brother Ben about buying a new car. Rachel says, "So, I finally decided to get a new car." Ben says, "Oh yeah? What, what kind are you looking at?" Rachel pauses for a moment. She says, "Well, I really want an SUV, but, they are pretty expensive, so I might just get a sedan instead." Ben says, "That makes sense. My friend just bought a Toyota, and he really likes it." Rachel pauses again. She says, "A Toyota? I have not, I have not really looked at those yet. I was thinking more about a Honda, but actually, my neighbor has a Toyota, and she says it gets really good gas mileage." Ben says, "Yeah, and they last a long time, too." Rachel says, "True. I guess I should go to the dealership this weekend and test drive a few." Did you notice the pauses in that conversation? When Rachel was trying to decide between an SUV and a sedan, there was a natural break in her thought process. She was weighing the pros and cons in her head. She used the filler phrase, to bridge the gap between her desire for an SUV and the reality of the price. Then, when Ben mentioned a Toyota, Rachel had to search her memory. There was a pause while she thought about whether she had considered a Toyota. She even did a mini false start when she said she had not really looked at them yet. But then she remembered that her neighbor had one. She used the word "like" to fill the space while she was accessing that memory. And at the very end, she hesitated before saying she should go to the dealership. She repeated the beginning of her sentence. She said, I guess I should go." She lost her momentum for a fraction of a second, repeated her words to get back on track, and then finished her thought. This is the rhythm of real life. It is a rhythm of starts, stops, and restarts. If you can tap your foot to this rhythm, you will understand English so much better. Now, I want to give you a very specific tip for when you are watching movies or listening to podcasts in English. When you hear someone hesitate, do not rewind the audio. A lot of learners hear an or a false start, and they immediately think, "Oh no, I missed something," and they go back 10 seconds to listen to it again. Do not do that. There is nothing back there. It is just empty space. If you rewind every time someone says, you will spend 3 hours watching a 30-minute movie. Just keep moving forward. Trust your brain. Your brain is smart enough to fill in the blanks. If someone says, "I went to the store to buy some, milk," you do not need to rewind to figure out what the meant. The meant nothing. Just keep listening. The only time you should ever rewind is if you missed an actual vocabulary word, or if you completely missed the main idea of a whole paragraph. But never rewind for a filler word. Treat filler words like background noise, like the sound of a car driving past on the street. You hear it, but you do not focus on it. You do not analyze it. You just let it pass by. I also want to talk about how hesitation changes depending on who you are talking to. The way people hesitate with their friends is very different from the way they hesitate with their boss. With friends, people use a lot of ums and uhs and likes. They are very relaxed. They do not care if they sound messy. But in a professional setting, like at an office or in a business meeting, people try to hide their hesitation a little bit more. They use different, more formal filler words. Instead of saying, they might say, let me think about that for a second. Instead of saying like, they might say, for example. But even in a professional setting, people still hesitate. They still make mistakes. They still start sentences and stop them. It is just a cleaner version of the same thing. Imagine a meeting between a manager named Olivia and an employee named Nathan. Olivia says, "Nathan, I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming marketing project. What are your initial thoughts on the timeline?" Nathan says, "Well, that is a good question. I think the timeline is, it is a bit tight. But if we focus on the main priorities, I think we can meet the deadline." Even in this professional conversation, Nathan is hesitating. He repeats himself. He says, that is a good question." He uses the filler phrase, he says, before he finishes his sentence about focusing on the main priorities. He is speaking professionally, but his brain is still working at human speed. His mouth is still trying to keep up with his ideas. When you are watching business English videos or listening to English in the workplace, do not assume that everyone will speak in perfect continuous sentences. They will not. They will still hesitate. They will still use filler words. The hesitation might be slightly less frequent than it is at a coffee shop with friends, but it is still there. If you expect perfect robotic speech in a business meeting, you will be disappointed. But if you expect natural human speech, you will be perfectly prepared. Let us do one more deep practice before we move on to some even more complex ideas. I want you to imagine a slightly longer scenario. This is going to feel like you are eavesdropping on a real conversation. I want you to read through it smoothly. Do not stop at the ums. Do not stop at the false starts. Just let your eyes flow over the words and grab the main meaning, exactly like your ears should do when you are listening. Imagine two friends, Jason and Mia, are talking about a recipe Jason tried to cook. Jason says, "So, I tried to make that pasta dish you told me about last week." Mia says, "Oh yeah? How did it turn out?" Jason says, "Well, it was, it was okay, but I think I used too much garlic." Mia laughs and says, "Too much garlic? Is that even possible?" Jason says, "Trust me, it is. I was reading the recipe, and it said 2 cloves. But, the cloves I had were really small, so I figured I should use, I don't know, 5 or 6? And, well, actually, I think I ended up using 8. Mia says, "Oh my gosh, Jason, no wonder it was strong. Did you at least like the sauce?" Jason says, "The sauce was fine, I guess. It was just, it was hard to taste anything over the garlic. Next time I will just follow the recipe exactly." Mia says, "Yeah, that is probably a good idea." Did you see how easily that conversation flowed? Jason was telling a funny story about his cooking disaster. He used hesitation to build the joke. When he was explaining why he used so much garlic, he hesitated. He said, 5 or 6, and then he corrected himself and said 8. The hesitation made the story feel real. If he had just said, "I used 8 cloves of garlic instead of 2, it would not have been as funny." The way he stumbled over his words made it sound like he was actually reliving the moment in his kitchen, trying to justify his bad decision to use so much garlic. And Mia used an when she said, "No wonder it was, no wonder it was strong." She was searching for the right word. She could have said spicy, or intense, or overpowering. She took a second, said and then just went with the simple word strong. This is the beauty of natural speech. It tells a story not just through the vocabulary, but through the mistakes and the pauses. When you learn to listen through the pauses, you are not just learning English. You are learning how to connect with people. Let us take this even further now. There is another side to hesitation that we need to look at. Sometimes, people do not finish their sentences at all. Have you ever been talking to someone and they start saying something, but then their voice just slowly fades away until they stop talking completely? They do not correct themselves. They do not start a new sentence. They just leave the sentence hanging in the air. This is called a trail off. It is exactly what it sounds like. The speaker creates a trail of words that just fades into nothing. A trail off usually happens when the person speaking suddenly loses confidence in what they are saying, or when they realize that the thing they are about to say might be boring, or when they just decide it is not worth the effort to finish the thought. When you are listening to English, a trail off can be incredibly confusing because your brain is waiting for the end of the sentence. In grammar class, every sentence has a subject, a verb, and an ending. But in real life, people just drop the ending. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in a real conversation so you know exactly what I am talking about. Imagine 2 friends, Liam and Nora, are talking about a movie they just saw. Liam says, "I thought the acting was really good, but the story was kind of, it was just a little bit." And then he stops. He does not finish his sentence. He just lets his voice drop and he looks at Nora. What just happened there? Liam started to criticize the story. He was going to say it was a little bit boring, or a little bit confusing, or a little bit long. But right at the last second, he decided not to say it. Maybe he thought Nora liked the movie, and he did not want to hurt her feelings. Maybe he just could not find the right word. So he used the filler phrase, He started his sentence, and then he just faded away. If you are not used to this, you might be sitting there waiting for him to say what the story was. You might even ask him, "A little bit what?" But a native speaker would understand instantly that he changed his mind about finishing the thought. As a listener, you have to learn to let go of unfinished sentences. When you hear someone trail off, just let the sentence go. Do not hold on to it waiting for an ending that is never going to come. The meaning is already clear. He did not like the story very much. You got the message. You do not need the grammatical ending. Let us look at another example of a trail off, because they happen in all kinds of situations. Imagine a woman named Sophie is talking to her husband, Mark, about their weekend plans. Sophie says, "I was thinking maybe we could go to the park on Sunday. Or maybe we could just, we could just stay home," and then she stops talking. She shrugs her shoulders and takes a sip of her coffee. Again, she left the sentence completely unfinished. She was going to say, "Stay home and clean," or "Stay home and relax," but she stopped herself. When you hear a trail off, you have to use your social imagination. You have to look at the person's body language and the context of the conversation to fill in the blank yourself. But the most important thing is that you do not panic. You do not need to rewind the audio. You do not need to check your dictionary. A trail-off is just a polite way of changing direction without making a big deal out of it. Now I want to talk about something that happens when people are talking together that can make listening feel like a total nightmare if you are not ready for it. I am talking about overlapping speech. In a textbook, people take turns perfectly. Person A speaks, then person B speaks, then person A speaks again. It is like a game of tennis. But in real life, conversations are more like a dance. Sometimes people step on each other's toes. People start speaking at the exact same time. Or someone will start speaking just a fraction of a second before the other person finishes their sentence. This overlap is completely normal, but it makes listening so much harder because you are suddenly hearing two voices at once and you do not know which person to listen to. Hesitation actually plays a massive role in overlapping speech. When a speaker hesitates for a little too long, the listener might think it is their turn to talk, so they start speaking. Then the original speaker finds their word and starts speaking again. And now they are both talking. Let me show you how this happens. Imagine two co-workers, Ethan and Chloe, are discussing a project. Ethan says, "I think we need to change the, and then he pauses for 2 seconds. Chloe thinks he is done, so she jumps in and says, "The deadline?" Ethan hears her, but he also finally found his word, so he says, "The layout." At the exact same time she says the deadline. They both laugh, and Ethan says, "Sorry, go ahead." And Chloe says, "No, you go ahead. What about the layout?" Does that sound familiar? Have you ever been in a conversation like that? When you are listening to this happen, it feels chaotic. You hear a collision of words. But as a listener, you do not need to understand every syllable of that collision. All you need to understand is the social rule that is happening. The social rule is, when two people talk at the same time, one of them will usually stop and say, "Sorry, you go ahead." It is a tiny little traffic jam of words. When you are watching an English movie or listening to a real conversation and two people start talking over each other, do not stress out. Do not try to decode both sentences at the same time. Just relax and wait for the traffic jam to clear. One person will stop, the other person will repeat what they were saying, and the conversation will keep moving forward. Overlapping speech is not a failure of your listening skills. It is just a natural feature of human interaction. Let us dig a little deeper into how people use hesitation to actually invite someone else to speak. We talked earlier about how are used to hold your turn. But sometimes people use hesitation to give their turn away. If someone wants you to talk, they might intentionally leave a sentence unfinished, hoping you will finish it for them. Imagine a guy named Jake is talking to his sister, Bella, about a restaurant. Jake says, "We went to that new Italian place last night, and the pasta was," and then he stops and looks at Bella, raising his eyebrows. He is not searching for a word. He knows the word good. He is purposely leaving the sentence blank because he wants Bella to participate. He wants her to say, "Oh, was it good?" Or, "Was it bad?" When you hear someone leave a strong pause at the end of a sentence, especially if their voice goes up at the end, they are not confused. They are throwing the ball to you. As a listener, You have to learn to hear the difference between a thinking pause and an invitation pause. A thinking pause usually happens in the middle of a sentence. An invitation pause usually happens at the end of a thought, and the person will look at you expectantly. I want us to talk about another type of word that people use to fill up space, and these are the connecting words. You know words like and, but, so, and because. In a grammar book, these words have strict rules. You use and to add information. You use but to show contrast. But in real life, people use these words just as filler words. Have you ever noticed how many people start their sentences with the word so? So, I was at the store today. So, what do you want for dinner? In a lot of cases, the word so does not connect to anything. It is just a way to start the engine. It is a way to announce that you are about to start talking. When someone starts a sentence with so, it does not mean you need to look back at the previous sentence to find a cause and effect relationship. Most of the time, it means absolutely nothing. It is just a verbal starting gun. The word and is used in the exact same way. People will just keep saying, and to connect tiny little thoughts together so they do not have to stop and take a breath. Imagine a woman named Olivia is telling her friend Ryan about her morning. Olivia says, I woke up late, and I burnt my toast, and I could not find my keys, and I missed the bus, and I just had a terrible morning. If you look at that sentence grammatically, it is a run-on sentence. A teacher would put red ink all over it. But in spoken English, it is incredibly common. She is using the word and as a bridge between all her morning disasters. It keeps the story moving fast. When you are listening to someone use and like this, do not try to separate the ideas into different logical boxes. Just let the flow of the word and carry you through the story. It is just a rhythm word. It keeps the beat going. But is another word that people use to fill time. Sometimes people say, but just to introduce a new thought, even if it does not contrast with the previous thought. Imagine a man named Daniel is talking to his friend, Kevin, about a book. Daniel says, I read that book you gave me, but, I did not really like the ending. Grammatically, the word but does not make sense there. He should have said, however. Or he should have just started a new sentence. But people do not talk like that. They say but because it is an easy word to say. It gives them a second to transition from talking about reading the book to talking about the ending. When you hear and but and so used in strange places, do not let it confuse you. Just treat them as little bumps in the road. Feel the bump and keep driving. Let us put all of these new ideas together into a really big practice conversation. We are going to listen in on a group of friends. This time, there are 3 people. Having 3 people in a conversation makes the hesitation and the overlapping speech much more intense. When there are 3 people, the turns are shorter, the interruptions are more frequent, and the filler words are everywhere. I want you to imagine 3 friends named Sam, Emma, and Lucas. They are sitting in a living room, trying to figure out what movie to watch. Sam says, so, what are we thinking for tonight? Emma says, I was kind of in the mood for a comedy or something, but, Lucas says, oh, I was going to say a horror movie. Emma says, a horror movie? Really? Sam says, wait, hold on. I actually saw a really good thriller last week that we could watch that. If you guys want. Lucas says, oh, what is it called? Sam says, it is called the Night Window. or something like that. I cannot. I can't remember the exact name, but it is about a guy who, well, actually, he is not a guy, he is a detective, and he is trying to solve this really weird crime. Emma says, "That sounds okay, I guess, but I am really not in the mood to be scared tonight." Lucas says, "It is a thriller. It is not a horror movie. There is a difference." Emma says, "Well, even so, I would rather just watch something, you know, something light." Sam says, we could look at the comedy list on the app. Let us break down the beautiful mess of that conversation. Right away, Sam starts with a so, which is just his engine starting. Then he uses a classic false start. He says, What are we thinking?" He could not find the right verb, so he just repeated the beginning of the sentence. Emma uses the phrase to fill the space before she says comedy. Then she starts to say a comedy, but she adds a but and an which opens the door for Lucas to interrupt. Because Emma hesitated, Lucas took that as his chance to jump in and suggest a horror movie. This is a perfect example of hesitation causing overlapping speech. Emma was not done talking, but her hesitation signaled to Lucas that she was losing her momentum, so he took the floor. Then Sam jumps in and says, wait, hold on." He uses filler words like and actually, and then he does another false start. He says, "We could watch that if you guys want." But when Lucas asks for the name, Sam struggles to remember it. He says, it is called the Night Window. He repeats the word "the" because he is buying time to pull the name out of his memory. Then he does a massive false start about the plot. He says it is about a guy who, well, actually, he is not a guy. He is a detective. He corrected himself in the middle of explaining the movie. And Emma uses a trail off at the very end. She says she would rather watch something, something light. She could have said something light and funny, but she just let the sentence fade away. If you can listen to that three-person conversation and not feel completely overwhelmed, you are making amazing progress. The secret is to stop trying to understand every single grammatical connection. Do not worry about why Sam said, but when he was describing the movie. Do not worry about why Emma used, Just grab the main facts. Sam wants to watch a thriller. Lucas wants to watch a horror movie. Emma wants to watch a comedy. That is the core of the conversation. Everything else is just human packaging. It is just wrapping paper around the main idea. As an English learner, your job is to unwrap the package and find the idea inside. You do not need to analyze the wrapping paper. I want to talk about one more thing before we move to the final layer of this topic, and that is how people slow down their speech when they are thinking. We have talked a lot about sounds like and words like, and But sometimes there is no sound at all, and there is no word. The person just speaks incredibly slowly. They stretch out the normal words to make them last longer. Imagine a woman named Grace is talking to her friend, Tom, about a difficult decision she has to make at work. Grace says, "I have been thinking about quitting my job." She does not say between those words. She just says each word very slowly. She is using time to weigh the heavy emotion of what she is saying. When you hear someone slow their speech down dramatically, it is a massive signal. It usually means they are talking about something important, something emotional, or something difficult. As a listener, when the speed of the conversation drops, Your brain should perk up. You should know that the next words out of their mouth are going to be important. Think about the opposite. When people are excited, they talk fast. When people are buying time because they are thinking of a complex idea, or because they are nervous, they talk slow. Have you ever heard someone give a speech, and they get to a part where they have to read a specific number or a difficult name? They always slow down. They say, "My phone number is 5551234." They slow down to make sure they do not make a mistake. When you are listening to English, use the speed of the speech as a map. If the speech is fast, just relax and ride the wave. If the speech suddenly gets very slow, pay attention. The person is probably about to give you a key piece of information, or they are about to express a strong feeling. Slowing down is just another form of thinking time. It is a silent hesitation that tells you the brain is working hard. Let us do a massive practice to bring everything together. I want you to imagine you are at a dinner party. There are 4 people at the table. You are just quietly listening to them. Their names are Chris, Laura, Ben, and Mia. They are talking about a mutual friend named David, who recently moved to a new city. Chris says, "So, did you guys hear that David finally moved to Seattle?" Laura says, "Yeah, he mentioned it to me, like, a month ago. I think he is really happy there." Ben says, "That is awesome. I was actually thinking about visiting him next month, but, well, I don't know. My work schedule is pretty crazy right now, so," and then he stops talking and shrugs. Mia says, "You should totally go. The flight is only, like 3 hours?" Ben says, "Really? I thought it was longer than that." Mia says, "No, it is 3 hours if you get a direct flight. But if you have a layover, it could be, like 5 or 6 hours." Laura says, "Even so, it is totally worth it. Seattle is great." Chris says, "I have never been, but, I have always wanted to go. Maybe we could, all go together?" Ben says, That would be amazing. But, let me just check my schedule first, and I will let you guys know next week." Take a breath and look at how much natural, messy English was packed into that short dinner conversation. Chris started with the classic filler, "so," and then he hesitated to say David's name, even though it is a simple name. Laura used the word like to measure time, saying like a month ago, which is incredibly common in spoken English, even though it makes no grammatical sense. She also used, and a false start when talking about David being happy. Ben did a beautiful trail off. He started to explain why he might not be able to visit, saying his work schedule is pretty, and then he just gave up and stopped talking. He did not finish the sentence with busy. He just let it fade away. Then Mia used and another stretched word, "will," to introduce a correction about the flight time. She also used as a filler before giving the longer flight time. Chris used like to soften his suggestion that they all go together, and Ben repeated himself, saying that would be amazing, showing how his mouth was trying to catch up with his excitement. And he ended with a classic, before promising to check his schedule. If you made it through that paragraph and understood the main idea, which is that they all want to visit their friend David in Seattle, but Ben needs to check his work schedule first, then you have successfully filtered out all the hesitation. You have successfully ignored the ums, the uhs, the likes, the you-knows, the false starts, and the trail-offs. You listened like a human, not like a grammar machine. To truly master this, we have to uncover the final layer of the puzzle. We need to talk about the emotional side of hesitation. Yes, people hesitate because their brain is looking for a word. But people also hesitate because their heart is feeling something. When hesitation is connected to emotions, it changes the way the words sound. It changes the pitch of the voice. And if you can learn to hear these emotional hesitations, you will understand English on a level that most learners never reach. Let me explain what I mean by emotional hesitation. Think about the word well. We talked about well as a stretched word that people use just to buy thinking time. But well is also a shield. People use the word well when they have to disagree with you, but they do not want to make you angry. Imagine a woman named Hannah asks her boss, Robert, if she can take a whole month off for a vacation. Robert pauses. He says, "Well, Hannah, that is a really long time to be away from the office. Listen to that well. It is not just a filler word. It is a warning sign. It is a polite way of saying no before he actually says the word no. When you hear someone start a sentence with a strong, stressed well, you should prepare yourself for a rejection or a disagreement. It softens the blow. If he just said, "No, you cannot take a month off," it would sound harsh. The hesitation makes it human. As a listener, when you hear that emotional well, do not think the person is confused. Know that they are trying to protect your feelings. Another brilliant emotional filler is the phrase "I mean." You will hear this constantly in spoken English. People say, "I mean" right in the middle of a sentence to correct themselves, not because they made a grammar mistake, but because they realized they are not explaining their feelings accurately. Imagine a man named Thomas is talking to his wife, Lisa, about a restaurant they went to. Thomas says, "The food was okay. I mean, it was actually pretty good, but the service was terrible." Why did he say, "I mean"? Because he started by saying the food was okay. But then he felt like okay was too weak of a word. He realized he actually liked the food. So he used "I mean" to pivot his feelings. "I mean" is like a steering wheel. It shows you that the speaker is adjusting their thoughts to be more honest. When you hear "I mean," just know that the person is trying to be more precise about what they really think. They are updating their sentence in real time to match their true emotions. There is another type of emotional hesitation that happens when someone has to ask for a favor or bring up an uncomfortable topic. People will often use a very long introduction before they actually say what they want to say. They will say things like, "So, the thing is," or "I was just wondering if," or "This might sound crazy," but these phrases are massive hesitation blocks. They are designed to test the water. The speaker is throwing out a line to see if you are in a good mood before they reel in the actual request. Imagine your friend, Kevin, comes up to you and says, "Hey, so, the thing is, I was wondering if, maybe I could borrow some money." Kevin did not just walk up and say, "Can I borrow money?" He built a bridge of hesitation to get to his question. He is nervous. He is afraid you will say no. As a listener, when you hear "so," the thing is, your brain should immediately realize that this person is nervous. They are building up to a big request, and you should pay close attention to the end of their sentence. Hesitation tells you the mood of the conversation. It is an emotional compass. Now, I want to talk about something that happens when people speak really fast. Sometimes hesitation gets lazy. When people are talking quickly, they do not take the time to say a clear or They just make a tiny sound with their mouth closed. It sounds like a little grunt, or an or just a sudden stop in the air coming out of their mouth. It is almost like a vocal hiccup. If you are listening to fast native speakers, you will hear these micropauses all the time. Imagine a guy named Pete is telling a story to his friend, Jake. Pete says, I ran to the store, to get some milk, and, the cashier was really rude. Did you hear those little, sounds? They are not words. They are not even, They are just the speaker's vocal cords taking a tiny half-second break. Do not try to decipher these sounds. Do not look them up in a dictionary. Just accept them as the breath of the conversation. They are the spaces between the notes in a song. Let us shift gears a little bit and talk about your role in all of this. We have spent a lot of time talking about how to listen to other people hesitate. But what about when you are the listener in a real conversation? How do you respond to someone else's hesitation? When someone is talking to you and they say, for a long time, what do you do? Do you just stare at them silently? If you stare in silence while someone is thinking, it makes them very nervous. In English culture, we use something called filler listening. These are tiny sounds and words that we say to tell the speaker, I am still here, I am listening, keep going. These sounds are things like, right? Yeah, okay, and Imagine your coworker, Diana, is telling you about a problem she is having. Diana says, I am trying to finish this report, but, the computer system is, really slow today. And, I just do not think I am going to, I am not going to finish it by 5. While she is saying all of this, you are not just sitting there like a statue. You are nodding your head and saying, right, yeah. You are feeding her encouragement. You are using your own filler sounds to fill the gaps, while she uses her filler sounds to think. When you watch English movies, listen for these background sounds. You will hear the person who is not talking making little noises the whole time. This is a crucial part of the rhythm of English. It is what keeps a conversation feeling alive. If you learn to use these little sounds, like and right, you will sound so much more natural when you are having a conversation. You will sound like you truly understand the dance of spoken English. Let us talk about a hilarious thing that happens to everyone, native speakers included. Sometimes a person hesitates, and their brain just completely crashes. They forget what they were talking about entirely. This is called losing your train of thought. When this happens, the speaker has to admit defeat and ask for help. They will say things like, wait, what was I saying? Or, I completely lost my train of thought. Or, where was I going with this? If you are listening to someone and they say this, it is not a test. They genuinely do not remember. You can actually help them. You can say, you were talking about your weekend. Or, you were saying something about the weather. This is a beautiful moment in real English. It shows that language is not a perfect machine. It is a messy human tool that breaks down sometimes. When you hear someone lose their train of thought, do not feel awkward. Just smile, because you just witnessed a very real, very human moment of brain failure. It happens to the best English speakers in the world. Let us do one final massive practice exercise. I want you to imagine a very realistic, slightly awkward conversation. This is going to include everything we have talked about today. I want you to read through it smoothly, letting your brain skip over the filler words, catch the false starts, ride out the trail-offs, and feel the emotional hesitation. Imagine two roommates, Nathan and Oliver. Nathan is the one who pays the electricity bill, and he needs to ask Oliver for his share of the money. This is always a slightly uncomfortable conversation. Nathan says, "Hey, Oliver, do you have a second?" Oliver says, "Sure, what is up?" Nathan says, "Well, it is about the electricity bill." Oliver says, "Oh, right. Did it go up again?" Nathan says, "Yeah, it did. It is, it is $50 more than last month, which is, it is pretty crazy, but, I already paid it, so I just need you to, I need your half." Oliver pauses and says, "Oh, okay. $50 more? That is a lot. I was not really expecting that." Nathan says, "I know, me neither. I think it is because we were running the air conditioning so much last month, but anyway, so the thing is, I need the money by Friday, if that is okay with you." Oliver says, "Friday? That is in 2 days. I do not get paid until next Tuesday." Nathan says, "Oh, well, can you give me half of it on Friday and the rest on Tuesday?" Oliver says, "Yeah, I can do that. I am sorry about the timing." Nathan says, No, do not worry about it. It is fine. Let us look at how powerful hesitation was in that conversation. Right from the start, Nathan used to soften the approach. He asked if Oliver had a second, which is the universal warning sign that an awkward conversation is coming. Then he used the emotional filler, before bringing up the bill. He used to measure the price increase, saying it is $50 more. He used, to correct himself and say the price was crazy. Then he did a beautiful trail off when he said he needed Oliver's half. He started by saying, "I just need you to, I need your half." He could not find a polite way to say, "Give me the money," so he used a and a restart. Oliver responded with his own hesitation, saying, showing that he was surprised and a little stressed about the price. Nathan used the phrase "so the thing is" right before he asked for the money by Friday. That was his big emotional hesitation block. He was building up the courage to set a deadline. When Oliver was shocked by the Friday deadline, he stretched the word "well" into "we'll" to show his disagreement and his panic. He then had to use a thinking pause to figure out his work schedule. Nathan used, to soften his counteroffer about splitting the payment. And at the very end, Oliver used, to soften his apology for not having the money ready. If you understood the emotional dance of that conversation, you are truly mastering natural English. You were not just hearing words. You were hearing two people navigating a stressful situation using hesitation as a shock absorber. The filler words were not mistakes. They were the tools that kept the conversation from turning into an argument. When Nathan said, he was protecting Oliver's feelings. When Oliver said, "we'll," he was expressing his panic without being rude. This is why I keep telling you that hesitation is the secret code of natural speech. It is not noise, it is information. It tells you how the speaker feels. It tells you if they are confident, nervous, angry, or happy. Once you unlock this code, English stops being a boring academic subject and starts being a vibrant, living connection between real people. We have reached the end of our time together for this topic. We have completely changed the way you look at listening to English. You no longer have to panic when someone says, You no longer have to feel lost when someone changes their mind in the middle of a sentence. You know how to handle stretched words, silent pauses, overlapping speech, emotional softeners, and people who completely lose their train of thought. You have the tools now. But having the tools is only the first step. You have to use them. I want you to make a promise to yourself right now. Promise me that you will go out and listen to real, unscripted English today. Do not listen to a textbook audio track. Go find a podcast where two friends are just chatting. Go watch an interview on YouTube where the host does not edit out the mistakes. Listen to the messiness. Celebrate the messiness. When you hear someone stumble over their words, I want you to literally smile, because you know exactly what they are doing. You are no longer an outsider looking in through a window. You are inside the room, understanding the rhythm of the language. It is going to take a few weeks for your brain to fully accept all of this, but if you keep listening every single day, it will happen. Your brain will stop translating and start just feeling the English. It is a beautiful feeling, and you are so close to achieving it. If this lesson helped you, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now. It helps English in Fluency grow, and it helps me keep making these deep dive lessons for you. Leave a comment down below telling me about the most interesting hesitation you have ever heard in English, or just tell me where you are from. I love reading your stories, and I reply to as many comments as I can. Share this video with your study group or your friends who are also trying to improve their listening skills. You guys are the reason I make these videos, and your support means the absolute world to me. Keep practicing. Do not be afraid of the pauses, and remember that perfect English does not exist. Only real English exists. I am Alex, and this has been English in Fluency. I will see you in the next video. Keep going. You are doing incredible work.